housekeeping rules, perhaps. Do we start with that?
Yeah, so كل شيء غادي يكون في ميوت ملي نبداو وفي الأول ديال المناقشة غادي نتاو المايكرو لحنا باش هي تقدم راسها تقول شوية على التجربة ديالها وإلا عندكم أسئلة قبل ما ندخلوا في مناقشة بيناتنا دخلوهم في chat ولكن في حد الآخر ديال هاد السيشن هذه غادي يكون تبدلها يعني مناقشة بغينا this is your floor so أي أسئلة اللي عندكم غادي نناقشوا بيناتنا اوكي واخا يلا باش نبداو هذه حناء بيزاد فونداتريس و president ديال Douar Tech and many more hats. So this is your time هنا قولي لنا شوية على التجربة ديالك مرحبا بك.
فرحانة اليوم باش نكون معكم في زنجبار جيت تنزانيا حيت الأصدقاء ديالي عايشين هنايا وبغاوني نشوف واحد البروجي ديالهم وثانيا حيت عايشه في افريك دو لاست دابا من العام اللي فات مشيت لكيغالي ولكن فرحت بزاف على هاد الفرصه باش نتكلم معكم اليوم. سميتي هناء، انا مقاوله اولا ورجعت المغرب في 2017 بعد ما عشت تقريبا 10 سنين في فرنسا. ما كنتش علاش عندي هاد l'accent français في العربية وفي الإنجليزية وفي عندنا l'accent français très يدومين دونك في كل اللغة اللي تنتكلم. وكبرت في المغرب، كبرت في الرباط. كنت مشيت للمدرسة الفرنسية وبعد مشيت لفرنسا باش نقرا. كنت بغيت ملي كنت عايشه في المغرب كانت عندي بزاف ديال الحلم وكنت بغيت نمشي للولايات المتحده ولكن بون على بزاف الحوايج مشيت لفرنسا باسكو جي اون بورس دو غوفرنمون فرونسي و لي كونديسيون ديالي à l'époque enfin switch perhaps we do English Darija, right? So at the time it would make sense for me to take on this opportunity of a scholarship because I really wanted to be autonomous and independent for a lot of reasons in my family life. And so yeah, after 10 years من بعد 10 سنين في فرنسا رجعت المغرب. ومن رجعت المغرب باش نتقاتل مع المغرب. المغرب باش نجيب هاد المشاريع اللي ماشي هما مشاريع ستاندار ديال غادي نرجع للمغرب وغادي ندخل في لو ستاتيو كو ونتزوج وهادشي كله اللي الناس ملي تمشيو للخارج ترجعوا للمغرب على لو كونفور ولا فامي سي دي بون يعني there are good reasons. ولكن انا كانت عندي بحال a bill to settle with Morocco, and I'll tell you more about it. I grew up in this very kind of like paradise environment, Rabat, French schools, American school in the summer, educated family, promoting education, etc. And eventually time constraints and obstacles happened. My family went through a lot of hurdles. I lost my sister when I was 16 to cancer, and from there my parents couple was very fragile, and I had to go through all of this on my own because my other sister was not there. And eventually when I decided to go to France, and at the time studying had become like so much of my like the rope I was holding on to. So I was just being the best all the time, best student to all curricula that I would choose. I did like 3 bachelor's degree, 2 master's degree. When I went to France, I was like to make the most of it. but also because I was, in hindsight, I realized it was very much of a survival mode. And also another part was that I had the strong desire to have as many tools for life as possible. I had this conversation with my mom when I was 16, and I told her I wanted to be a writer, and she said, I don't want you to come back to me and cry over my shoulders because you have no money and you have to depend on a man. So that was a very strong conversation that I had. By the way, I just had a conversation with my mom 2 days ago about writing projects, and it was another deal, but eventually it took about 15 years of my life to get to a level of comfort of other types of desires and identity. So long story short, and I'll be happy to dwell upon this later, but I had like my 20s very much pulling all the resources that could build up credibility because I wanted to be autonomous and push for projects. And yeah, after 10 years, after I've done my path in France, after I've integrated so much, I was so French, more French than the French people. But I also realized that I was not living the fullest of my life. I was the diversity in the room. There was a whole part of me that was not expressed in whatever I was doing as a consultant in Paris, even like integrated in the entrepreneurial scene of Paris and so on. And from there, I kind of decided to open up to the possibility of coming back to Morocco, try things out, and take my risk. So it's the output of like a lot of years of this having this in the back of my mind, and the impulse to take this leap of faith and come back to Morocco and start on my own without having so much of a basis, without having people like clapping at me because I was taking so much risk. As a matter of fact, I had my entire family tell me, you won't survive for 3 months. You won't do 3 months, and we'll see you then, and I'm sure we can book you a flight already back to Paris. Mais bon, ça a duré depuis 2017 et jusqu'à aujourd'hui. Au final, j'ai pas pris un in a long time. And I think now we're in 2021. I look back at this whole thing since 2017. And it has been like a great chunk of my life, of my adult life, for many reasons. I think creating a company as a human being, creating a project as a human being, is an expression of who you are. When you put so much intention in it to resolve issues that you may have with the culture, with the surroundings, and put yourself out there, it's extremely meaningful and it's a massive learning curve. So I know I've started with these kind of like introduction, but I'd like actually to dive into your questions. So Faye, please, let's start with questions. Let's continue with questions so I can share a bit more in a more natural way.
I mean, I would love بغيت نسمع منك قبل إلى تقدر تهضر شوية على داكشي ديال Pan Africa, the African ecosystem. دخلتي بزاف في هاد العالم ديال أفريقيا، وهذه ماشي شي حاجة كنشوفو ديما في المغرب. داكشي قبل ما نبداو أسئلة تقدر تهضر شوية على like the African ecosystem.
Yeah, and perhaps even the reason why I'm in East Africa. So
yeah, where are you right now, by the way? We don't know.
Zanzibar. Zanzibar. So a year and a half ago, actually, I was approached by some people that had helped the Moroccan government to take part in this Pan-African institution called Smart Africa, and they were opening a position for startups and ICT ecosystems. And those people that worked with the Moroccan government had seen me as head of Le Wagon, as head of Douar Tech, kind of create a lot of dynamic events, discussions, and in addition to the boot camps and I mean everything that we were doing in these tech hubs. And they saw me also get involved with IFO policy, the kind of a movement for innovators, creators that Leitmas knows very well because she's worked with them eventually afterwards. to push for entrepreneurs to take part in the conversation, to co-create public policies for innovation. And also eventually from that point, it's all about connections, right? So from that point, I met a lot of other people from the continent, from other countries that had also that were interested in what we were doing. And all of this, eventually led me to participate in the AfriLabs gathering, AfriLabs being an alliance of hubs in the African continent. And that started 10 years ago. And I started meeting like this incredible scene of entrepreneurs from all over the world, also repatriate entrepreneurs, but locals as well, people that really wanted to use what technology had to offer to shape things in their countries for very similar purposes as I was doing. I was seeing tech as an amazing opportunity to go faster in the systemic change that I wanted to participate to. Obviously, female leadership, inclusion, and I was actually able to have those conversations with people that were in different countries, in Nigeria, in Egypt, in South Africa, in Botswana, and others. And I think from the moment the Moroccan government had taken part in Smart Africa, they were like, I think you're the right person to join. And I was very excited because I knew Rwanda, and I was also excited for the opportunity to take Douar Tech to another level where it was not, it would evolve into a collective dynamic, less and less dependent on me, which is part of like the leadership vision that I also want to share with you at some point when in the conversation. So yeah, last year moved in February in Rwanda, taking the role in Smart Africa in charge of startups and ICT ecosystems. And essentially what I do is support countries to build up frameworks that are relevant to the growth of ecosystems. So it goes through startups, for instance, typically supported the Rwanda Startup Act, but also Benin, Côte d'Ivoire, and others. These were things that I was doing as part of the task force of I4 Policy, but it's different because I4 Policy is a movement and eventually now a consultancy. And Smart Africa really has this platform of Council of Ministers of ICT, Council of Regulators, a lot of decision makers eventually, and that all goes through heads of state. So President Kagame and his peers reviewing this whole digital transformation strategy together. So yeah, it's been a year of institutional work aside of entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship in a very weird approach because it's all remote, but it's a form of entrepreneurship eventually. That's and so through this, I got to meet those people from AfriLabs, like I said, 220 hubs out of the 680 that are active in the continent, all doing amazing stuff. Like you have to imagine that the hub is about a team of 5-10 people max, and usually it has a crowd of regular people coming 100 to up to 1,000. So it's a lot of people in the continent trying to make things happen, trying to create companies, startups, jobs, different ways of thinking, and really showing up out there. And I think as an entrepreneur that is probably not the most usual entrepreneur in Morocco, repatriate, female, and so on, it helped me very much strengthen my faith in what I was doing, to just be able to speak to other people and be connected with them regularly. Eventually they'll come next year. I've pitched in October 2019 in Addis, so that we organize, Douar Tech will be organizing the gathering of AfriLabs. It was meant to be 2020, but it's actually more beautiful because it's going to be 2021 in person. So the 10th anniversary of the AfriLabs Alliance. And I hope you all will be there, but it's just going to be an amazing opportunity to display your work and understand what other people are doing, and understand how much Africa can be this incredible market of opportunities and of growth for all of us. I think for me, this is, complete validation of a lot of beliefs that I had. And I think I've always had this desire to, and I've always felt really African. Like It's just that now I have more opportunities to really make it work. But 10 years ago, I tried to work with the African Bank of Development, was very disappointed in that, and left after 10 days. But what I'm seeing now, it's actually very exciting. There's a momentum there. There's really a decade ahead of us that every young people in this continent need to seize to be able to express themselves and make a difference. And that's what I want to participate in, absolutely. And I hope Douar Tech is actually participating in, but I see it already, so.
Yeah. No, thank you. And I think, again, the last thing I want to touch on before we hop into these questions is that, Hanae, you're part of so many ecosystems, not only in Morocco and Africa, but also in the Middle East, in Europe and beyond. And so like everything from the BMW Foundation to the House of Beautiful Business, and so many other kind of like networks that you're part of that I think are things that people maybe don't know about. And I don't want to dive into all of them, but I think it would be nice to talk about one major network that you think has inspired you and changed your mindset.
And perhaps explain a little bit le fil conducteur, the reason why. I am someone that wants to feel in delight and inspired. And so far my choices were very much linked to my intuitive, my intuition, basically. As much as I gathered credentials through like formal education, prestigious schools, and so on, I've actually carved my path through encountering people that I felt a connection with. I felt a trust in spending a period of my time with and spending more time with. It was Paris Altermind, with this thought leader called Mathieu Laine. Some other moments in my life, I had to kind of feel like I had to compromise. So typically consulting and so on, because you need to have a good salary to repay for a student loan because Paris is expensive, or because your family is going through trouble. That's all happened to me. But eventually, there were clear moments in my path, and it's even clearer now and more that when I felt so, vibrant, this very strong connection with someone, I had to follow. And eventually that led me to effectively build a strong network. And also because, to be honest, early on, I understood that it's part of like leadership is about. It's about meeting a community. It's all very new. I mean, we have some figures of female leadership, but a lot of them are in the corporate world and have rather embraced the male approach of leading, and have kind of like taken away their feminine energy and whatever they could bring as a difference to the workplace. And so very early on, I understood that having a strong network and a diverse network is not only enriching, it also takes you to the next level on a career, on any career choice. So, in addition to all the schools that I went to and that have a strong network, as a matter of fact, because it's a signal, I very early on understood that all of these credentials is just about the signal for opening doors for you in the future. So eventually, since I started writing about entrepreneurship, diving into entrepreneurship in Paris, and then moving into learning coding to open a coding school in Morocco, I met so many great people. I met the people from Le Wagon. It's a great community. I met the AfriLabs community, and I'll perhaps talk about the House of Beautiful Business more in detail. So House of Beautiful Business, I met them through someone who was shadowing my work from the BMW Foundation. And this is something that's actually important for you girls to realize. A lot of times you would think you'll be kind of unseen, but people are looking for you. People are looking for female entrepreneurs that are trying to make it, because the world has strong expectations on us bringing a change, and for good reasons, I think. So someone from the BMW Foundation just shadowing my work and asking me a few questions and asking me for introductions, which I was very open to do, and I helped some people create an event just like that. And I went to the event, and I very much clicked with those people. It was an event in Riyadh in Marrakesh about the tech scene in Marrakesh, which is super nascent. And from there, they invited me to their event, and I had no idea who they were, to be honest. I was like, okay, another conference. But they invited me to speak at the gathering in Lisbon the next October. And I had been to so many events because I had realized you have to really promote yourself, especially when it comes to Le Wagon, etc. It had to come with a lot of exposure. But that event was so much of a change for me. I met people that were so open-minded. I met cyborg dancers. I met magicians in the field of business. I met a shaman that works with astronauts. I met people that just, you know, completely validated that anything was absolutely possible. And I was like, I need a readjustment for when I go back to Morocco, because when I go back to Morocco, I just have to struggle with the guy from Bureau 317 in La Préfecture who wants to have me legalize 15 documents, and it's middle age. And I'm meeting those cyborg dancers that are feeling so free and light and in their power. I think this network, and I've been in touch with them since, and last year I was meant to open the chapter in Rabat, but given I had moved to Kigali, I opened the chapter in Kigali. The vision of House of Beautiful Business is how do we make business more beautiful and humans more human? Because I think it's important also for you to have those points of reference in whatever you're doing, because sometimes you're like so much into your business that you can't see the bigger picture. But you eventually are participating to a change, a systemic change right now that is absolutely much needed. We've come to the very limits of this neo-capitalistic model of business for profit and exploitation and management the old way. And right now, it's all about the values that you can embody and make alive through what you're doing, through your products, through your approach to your team, through your approach to your clients, through your approach to other decision makers that are in your realm. So for me, it just strengthened my inspiration. And you know, inspiration is something very delicate. If you interact with people that are on the energy and they're a bit skeptical, and we have a lot of skepticism in Morocco, a lot of people that are kind of down because they're stuck in their limited beliefs and they can't really connect with their higher selves. You actually need a lot of people to put you back into your track and mirror you and tell you how strong you are in what you're doing, in what you're trying to achieve, and what you're trying to express, and that it's worth it. And it's worth it to do it your way. So yeah, that's my relationship to House of Beautiful Business. And my main point here is whatever keeps you inspired and you know your flow, make it work.
Yeah, thank you. I just shared the link for House of Beautiful Business.
Yeah, you can sign up to the newsletter. It's totally worth it. Just like you can sign up also to AfriLab's newsletter.
I'm going to send them the business.
Yeah, to receive the information. And so you can have this in the back of your mind, because perhaps you create a project right away, or perhaps you won't answer one of your questions, operational questions right away. But your path as an entrepreneur is a life path. You're only starting. I'm only starting. So it's good to be able to nurture yourself and keep on growing in this identity of an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I'm going to send them the Beautiful Business playbook as well that we got.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. If everyone's ready, we can dive into questions. I don't know. خاصة نخرجوا بالدرجة
الله يخليكم الدارجه حيت مرات تنمشي الانجليزيه حيت تجيني ساهله في هذا الكونتكست اللي انا فيه ملي تنكون في الخارج ما تنتكلمش بزاف بالدارجه ولكن معلوم الله يخليكم الا ما فهمتوش شي حاجه ولا شي حاجه ما غير سولوني و شي واحد غادي يعاونني
المهم هنا غاديين. اوكي عند دعمة واحد سؤال من بلايتنس بيصف لي قبل وبلايتنس اللي بغيتي تدخلي أنا نختار واحد. let's see. اوكي so كنشوف بزاف ديال الحوايج about ميزان ديال الحياة. So she says, as we know, entrepreneurs in essence are human beings, so they are not spending all their time working. How can we balance between running our business and running and managing our lives?
It's a good question. It's a good question for many reasons. Entrepreneurs spend their time working, as a matter of fact. Entrepreneurs, when you're an entrepreneur, you start embodying this your whole time. So perhaps you're not in front of the whole time, or perhaps you're not taking the whole time. But still, it's always there, and you always see opportunities, and you discuss with others that see opportunities well, or you're trying to raise opportunities. So most entrepreneurs that I know are not, in this mindset of, let me stop becoming an entrepreneur. But they are indeed trying to find or manifest a balance. And I think entrepreneurship can be so hard sometimes because you receive you put yourself out there, you're being exposed, and sometimes you have like lots of backlashes and you don't see the reason why, but you have them, especially when you're a woman in the context of like a super high patriarchal society like Moroccan. Just because you'll see that you being you bothers other people that are dominant, and they cannot even fathom you being you. And this is like the power struggle that's happening. So it's all the more important to be aware, to work on your emotions, to do the inner work, because for me, the actual work of an entrepreneur is much more spiritual than the action. When you are able to remain in your energy of creativity, of pushing forward, of bringing forth, rather than being brought down, you are being an entrepreneur. And but of course, you need to manage the rest, like your body needs. Your body needs to function in a way that you feel happy, fine, and able to go. Because of course, burnouts are always a risk. And again, I think if I've learned anything in this journey since 2017, it's a long path ahead. And for that, you have to have the resources that are replenishing all the time, with the right conversations, with the right people, the right practices. I love to have a routine. Now I've been traveling a lot, so it's hard for me to have a routine where I'm at. But swimming, yoga, whatever makes you happy, and hold on to it. And yes, absolutely, your support system, your surroundings, you're gonna start creating your people. You're gonna have to like really prioritize with whom you want to spend more time with. And so for me, I see entrepreneurship as just this best lesson into adulthood. Did you ever had to take a loan from the bank to accomplish one of your projects? So when I was studying in France and I had a scholarship from the French government, my family was going through a hard time and I had to take a scholarship. And I eventually just finished paying my scholarship for my studies just last year. So yes, I did. Now, the way I see it, if you manage to avoid it, just avoid it, because it's always, banks are so behind when it comes to trusting entrepreneurs that are different. And banks, in general, in Morocco, in Africa, do not have the right tools to take risks with you and to accompany you. But you have many ways to actually attract money. Love money is good when you're starting. People from your family, and it comes with the support system, and it's money, community, a contact around you. I would advise to go there first rather than the bank. The bank, you feel like you are being autonomous and independent because you're signing a lot of paperwork and it's being transactional. And it's perhaps sometimes more comfortable than having the conversations on building trust with your surroundings for love money. But reality is love money is going to be the patient capital you need. And the most rewarding experience of creating the trust around you that you need for the long run. So perhaps that answers which then question. Yeah.
Yeah, we did get another question about funding a nonprofit business, Hanae. So definitely Love Money is one resource, but it might be worth talking about other sources of funding and how people can get there.
Yeah, so perhaps I'll just talk about the experience of Douar Tech. When I started and came back to Morocco, I had no budget aside than the budget that I had kept for my own spendings to be able to work for 15, 20 months, 2 years eventually. But what I did was to pitch to whomever wanted to hear me. So I actually went to discuss with the CEOs that started to be inspired by this. But it's not like we have a culture in Morocco that's, oh, you're doing a philanthropic work. That's how they perceive it because they come from another, they don't see the new sort of business that they can be. I might be interested for my CSR purposes. Those were conversations, but they didn't bring anything tangible. Eventually, I just had the Belgian corporation that was hooked to the project, and they accepted to give to just sponsor a teacher. So the whole starting of Douar Tech was very much about bootstrapping and finding the first right hook, institutional hook that could let this nascent project be for a while and let it emerge. It's important to know that you have, especially as a woman, you will have not big amounts for now, but those programs that are targeting women, and it's all about creating the necessary trust for them to want to support you. It does, it's small amounts. It was 8,000 euros. But eventually, this is the kind of things that build up over time. You start building up a relationship with donors. And that's what takes you to the next level. What happened the next year was that based on that, we were able to be spotted by Twilio and Tides Foundation in the US and received as the only organization, non-American, a funding of $30,000 for that we used to recruit to build our learning management system and so on. So what I'm saying here is that start with the opportunities that you have at hand, because it builds up this capacity for you to identify even more opportunities and hold on to the people with whom you're creating trust, because they're going to be your best ambassadors afterwards to go find more opportunities. And I think, we'll probably, in the context of the program, share a list of what we are using us as an organization to fundraise. So we make it easier for you, and in the spirit of open source, to identify potential sources of funding.
Definitely. And they'll have a class on investor networks and meeting with some potential donors and things like that as well. So we'll dive into it more, but definitely your experience is very much in line with what we're looking at. But I want to jump to a question from Fatima because it's kind of in the same mindset. So she asked, how do you deal with challenges that have come up in your journey as an entrepreneur? So maybe finding a grant, but it could be anything like creating strategy.
It was, I have I don't know, perhaps I could do a mapping of the different challenges to be able to put it out in a structured way. essentially what I found the most challenging part is to be diminished. الحقرة. This feeling of hagra when you have situations when you go to the administration, you're not being treated the same way as other people, you have to wait longer, you have to find strategies. Like just creating the nonprofit of Douar took me 4 months of going there, putting the right application to a guy that felt like, oh, he wanted to kind of show his little power over me. And so for 4 months, he made me come back. And whenever I would speak to him, oh, it's on the way. And whenever I went there and I cracked a crisis and I told him this is unacceptable, and he didn't like my tone. And then he told me, oh, but you just have to go to see my boss. And I was like, I'm going to see your boss just right now. I found out he had never put the application in. And I actually, I had been raised in Morocco to not challenge too much those sort of structures. At the end of the day, Bureau d'Association is at the prefecture, and you have it's essentially owned by or managed by the Ministry of Interior, and you don't want to have bad relationships with those people, right? But I pushed it, and I went upstairs and said I would want to talk to the Wali. And the secretary was, I told her, listen, this is unacceptable. It's been 4 months. We've been on the ground. We're doing workshops in Brerk. We don't have a recognition. Like, what is this? And I used the whole religious terminology, which is not my nature, but eventually it's what she was able to hear. And then she said, oh, go downstairs and meet this director. And so I went downstairs, but I went to the director and said, I'm coming from the Wali. So I essentially used their system of hierarchy to get myself into this office and explain the whole situation. And I was in my entire right to be upset. It takes 30 minutes online to create a non-profit in France. From the couch, I could do it. Morocco, it took me 4 months to be in person and go back and forth and go back and forth, Kaza Rabat. And they do this. And this guy, I'm pretty sure he did this just because of a strategy to get me drained. And eventually, perhaps he gets some bribery. But I was very stiff on the ethical approach that I wanted to give. So the hagra that I felt right there, and the hagra that I felt 2 weeks ago when I went back to give the same application, I mean, not the same application, but like give updates with our annual reports and so on, everything that we need to fill. He tried the same thing. The difference was that whenever I started in 2017, I was not prepared for this. So it ate me. I was so burning in flames inside of me. I was trying to understand. I was really upset, and I lost a lot of energy in this. 2 weeks ago, I was upset for like maybe 45 minutes. And then the next week I went back. And then I promised everyone that I would not get upset, but I got upset because he invented an excuse that was not legit. Oh, the stamp is not in the right position in the paper. You know, this is the kind of absurdity that you invent. But I was like, no, this is not going to happen. I had to lose 2 hours of my time, but then just because I was interacting with people, and perhaps a lesson in here is that your power to communicate effectively will always get you to find the right person that will unlock the situation. And so this man showed up as perhaps working closer to the Wali, and then just sorted out my thing really quickly. And from that moment, I took his number and I was like, anytime we'll need something, we'll call you. And they took my application. So of course, it's the kind of nightmare you think, why am I going through this? And I saw like maybe 5 other people pass. A younger man with his father passed before. Passed while I was waiting before him. So many situations like this. So this constant hagra that you can have at the post office, at the administration, at the bank, on the street. You're like, oh, this is too much. This is why I say the inner work is essential in here, because now I take it as a game. You know, I can identify. I'm gonna have this the persona similar to the guy from Bureau 317. It's okay. I'm gonna play in this situation. So the playfulness and the fact that you're able to process your emotions, to always keep yourself back to your creativity, joyfulness, etc., and whatever keeps you going is what it takes. That's just one example among many other examples, but I think another situation that I had was in context of Le Wagon. We were just really ramping up, had signed a deal with the OCP. For the first time in like three batches, I was not losing money. So it was like really great. And I had this partnership with this incubator accelerator that had amazing space in Casablanca. And but they had promised many things that they hadn't done. And after 1 week, they actually, while we had a partnership, they wanted me to pay them 200,000 dirhams while the deal was completely different. So they tried to really put me in a corner while I had a batch going on with people coming, etc. So logistically, it was a nightmare. And I felt betrayed. It was really tough to handle. And I think this is the kind of thing that I had to process afterwards. What helped me throughout all of this was to be able to understand how to process my emotions and keep the fuel going, even when it takes you to a bitter place of it's not fair the way I'm treated. Because in this case, these guys, 7, and I'm not naming them. I'm actually naming them, sat on the table yelling at me because they wanted to pressure me. And I, you know, it was not the first time that I actually interacted with men that had this discomfort with younger women that seemed to be more successful than them because they were actually getting things done. I had this in Paris as well. From the moment I had this experience of keeping my like holding on to what I was believing and what I was pushing for, they were just like, I would see them as it's a movie. And you just need to always be connected to your resources. And of course, what I'm saying is extreme, perhaps extreme, depending on your experience, but it's not agreeable situations to be treated this way. However, I think this is a kind of that really help you always adjust. Because essentially, in addition to doing your work in a great way as an entrepreneur, you have to manage perceptions. If you are polite, you're going to be seen as too weak and too soft. If you are coming along as bullish, you're going to threaten them, and you're going to have like a lot of people just backlashing to you. So adjusting the communication, adjusting, and always being very much in tune with the perceptions and understanding that you just need to play with them. It doesn't have to define you. You don't need to change. Perhaps you'll change for better reasons, spiritual, inner growth, whatever. But all of this is a game of inches, and you're pushing the needle inch by inch. So, yeah.
Now, Yakut, I've seen your question. I don't want to skip you. We're gonna come back to it, but I've seen 2 questions here on stress, and I want to invite Shema to ask your question. If you can unmute yourself, Shema. She's still with us, right? Oh wait, did we lose Shema maybe? Okay, well, I'll just read her question because I think it's important. So she is basically talking about how to manage stress, and particularly I think when it comes to life balance with family. So circling back to the first question as well, like pressures with family and friends, and maybe them not understanding entrepreneurship. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think I can tell you things like, oh, you always have to put yourself first, prioritize, be at the center, do a lot of activities, yoga, blah blah blah. I mean, and I'm eventually done all of it. What I think is important and what I think helps is to actually educate people on where you are at, so that they can reduce the pressure on you, on their expectations. You can explain, I've decided as the human being I am now to tackle this challenge, and it takes most of my time and energy. And I want to be able to have you in my team. try to like switch off the negative emotions of people to transform it into a fuel for you. And that comes by being honest, like radical honesty to yourself, and perhaps less radical depending on the preferences of and taste in terms of communication of your surroundings to others. But I think for me, I've learned so much from this entrepreneurial journey, mostly around how I could reshuffle and make better and fix a lot of relationships around me that were important to my family, for instance. That obviously has a lot of expectations on the support I can bring, mental support or other sort of supports. And I think perhaps here we even have women that have kids already or envisioning to have kids anytime soon, or have a partner that is demanding, or so on. I think the best choices that you can make for the sustainability of your company is really be aware of where you're at in each of your relationships, and bringing in like enough emotional intelligence to it so that they can always be supportive. And again, I think honesty with yourself and nurturing the relationship with yourself is the key to it.
Yeah, thank you. It looks like a lot of people related to that too, so I think it's really important to talk about and be open about, because sometimes maybe we can be embarrassed or hide it. But
as far as I'm concerned, and I think this is like this has been a great part of my life so far. Ever since I lost my sister at 16 and she was only 24, I thought, life is a blessing and I need to show up to it. Whatever I am having, some people are gone and they don't have it anymore. And I started being very interested in alternative medicines and everything that could take you away from not having to see a doctor. Essentially, your health comes as a huge priority, especially in this period of time. So keeping energy high is also the best to your immune system. And once you have both, then you can actually tackle your challenges in a very healthy way, which means bringing your full self, which means like bringing your brain capacity, your logical, cognitive capacities, but also your emotional intelligence to it. And you cannot be separated from your body. It has to be holistic. That a lot of times I realize my body can be my best friend, because when I'm not able and I'm suppressing thoughts, I'm actually feeling things that tell me whether I can trust this person on the business level or other levels or not, whether how I feel about the situation. And that, is a way for my intuition to be expressed. So take it as I won't say business project, but a strategic priority to be healthy and to be to just be healthy and in your full energy every day. I think once again the road is long, and you have to be there for the long run.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of feelings about like being good enough and people validating you. And Jihan made a point about maybe people don't validate you until you have results. But it seems like for you, it's been a lot about internal care and health and internal validation.
I think I was also just like everyone seeking a validation until I understood it was not the most powerful vehicle to whatever I was doing. I really felt a switch, and I'm just gonna ask you for a minute. I'm just changing the settings so I can not run out of battery. So I've been feeling this switch in my approach to my choices quite recently, to be honest. But I'm not doing things for validation anymore. I do things because it resonates so much with me. Of course, when you're younger, you seek validation. Of course, you need people to understand and see your potential. But once you have started to feel the contours of this immense potential that you have, you get rid of this, and you value feedback, and you value people's opinion. But it's not the reason why you're doing things. I think it's important to separate those two. You have to be extra clear every day on why you're showing up to your work. It can't be validation. It has to be so evident to you that it cannot be external validation. It has to be in your cells, in your bones, and I think you're on the path to that. But you'll realize soon enough once you start your inner work, but that it's not validation anymore. It's something else. It's bigger than you. You're participating in this. You're actually eventually channeling something that's bigger than you. You've captured an idea, and the universe is kind of working its way through you. Something like that powerful. It cannot be external validation. That doesn't stand the road. And I see questions on emotions. How do I deal with them? And what are the tricks? And anger. You know, it's funny because whenever I moved to Casablanca and I looked at again alternative medicine, and I found this really cool chiropractor that I went to because I had an injury in my feet, and we started actually working on organs, and he could, without me explaining, he could like actually realize the anger that I had in my stomach, and how all of this, because of course we're all related, and I think perhaps some of you are interested in Chinese medicine and that sort of Eastern philosophies. You carry, like your body has so much memory, you carry everything with you, and people perceive it at very subtle levels. So dealing with your emotions is actually, again, a strategic priority for you as a human being and for your endeavors. You can transform your anger into a fuel. You have to transform it into a fuel, otherwise it eats you. But this anger of, yes, Hadra, for instance, or things not being done in the right way, or not fast enough, the context not changing fast enough, or injustices. I'm very sensitive to injustices. And like seeing situations of injustices really gets to my bones, right? But I think emotions is exactly what it means. It's putting you into emotion. So how do you get to the next stage where you're actually being effective and not being eaten by them? So it's all about fuel. It's all about transforming. It's once again finding the space to having the conversations that are just going to light you up and give you perhaps elements that to dissect emotions. You have to have an emotional literacy, a strong emotional literacy. What I did when I started Le Wagon and Douar, I started my emotional dictionary. And I think it's a very practical tool. I perhaps will share it with Faye with some adaptations. But it was essentially a dictionary that helped me identify my emotions, because a lot of time you mix resentment, for instance, with anger, and it's not the same. With rejection, and it's not the same. And also, when you are understanding the power of your sensitivity, sometimes you realize perhaps you've been hypersensitive so far, and perhaps you've been like the sponge that absorbed all the emotions of others, and perhaps you are actually living emotions that are not even being yours. So all this emotional literacy is absolutely key to be able to identify your space and understand when you're not in your space, when you're not in your flow. So I would very much encourage you all to do this and to, you know, build your own dictionary with your own situations, and keep a journal so that you can fix your goals with your own emotions. I personally feel like I want to show up to all my emotions and have the courage to live them, because courage is key. Courage is a main driver to a lot of things that I do. I do think that feeling all of my emotions, even the dark ones, with the right tools is a form of courage. So that's I would yeah very much encourage you to build up that sort of tools that fits you and your emotional landscape.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll be doing some more work with emotional intelligence and having some guest speakers that are super specialized in that later in the program as well. So we'll be able to keep revisiting these themes because they're super important, especially as female entrepreneurs. But I want to circle back to, I want to give the floor to Yakut because you have a lot of questions about digitization and education. And of course, at the heart of Douar Tech, this is really what we do and what we love. And so maybe if you could choose one or two questions at most for Hanae, we'd all love to hear. Go ahead.
Hello, Hanae.
Hi.
It's really a pleasure to hear you speak. I mean, really, every word, every story, we can all relate to this. Yeah, so to jump up right to the subject, I have a question regarding coding and programming. So as I've written on the discussion window, I own an English center, not an English center with a twist. We are really oriented towards self-education, critical thinking, problem solving. We try to add a little bit of spice to the course. So it's not just an English course, it's more than that. And I've been wondering, do I need like to learn coding and programming in order to develop my business? Like to what extent is that going to help me really? Yeah, I think let's start with that question. That would be really nice.
The way I see it, it's not necessary that you do it. However, I hear that there's a curiosity, and if there's a curiosity, there's probably a good outcome out of it. I personally, whenever I dived into coding and it was this bootcamp of Le Wagon and all the rewarding experience that it was to build a project in the last 2 weeks and show it up and a good functional web app. It's the kind of thing that makes you feel it's a superpower essentially, and you want to develop a lot of superpowers in your realm of like your skill set, because you're gonna have to display your skill set throughout time. So I would say coding is good because it's rewires your brain. It's also very good for having a good approach to teamwork when you have to collaborate on projects, on dev projects. You have like a very strong ethics. Like if you take the Scrum methodologies, the level of transparency, the level of responsibility, the level of collaboration is very inspiring to just derive from it a workflow for a team that is even outside of coding and programming. However, once again, today it's very possible to do things that are web-based without knowing a single line of code. But it's just so stimulating for your brain and so stimulating for you as manager, because manager is one of the roles that you have to play, that I can only encourage people to dive into it. You know, I strongly believe in cross-fertilizing ideas, cross-fertilizing expertise. Once again, all my career, like my higher education has been all about mixing things that were not necessarily mixed. I did the calculation, and in 6 years I studied 100 subjects, from constitutional law to biology to business Chinese. I was just so eager to learn a lot of things and see how this shapes my brain and my capacity to think in different ways. And the more you do this, the more creative you become, because you have points of references in very different words. So you're just opening up all your chakras, and I just think that it's a good way. to nurture your business. Now you don't have to do it in a stressed way. You can do it over time. You have to be, if you want to develop this in your curriculum, you obviously have to have people that are for whom it's an expertise. But being able to speak that sort of language is always good. So yeah, that's my recommendation.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great. So, Hanae, I'm mindful of time. I don't know if you have time to stay till 2:30 or if we need to wrap up in a moment.
I'm going to confirm to you right now.
Okay.
I still have time until, yeah, I still have time.
Okay.
For the next half hour.
Okay. I'd like to invite Sued to pose a question, and then Flightless will go to you. But Sued has put a couple here, so if you want to introduce yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. شكرا بزاف Hannah. It's really a pleasure hearing your inspiring story. You remind me of a person who is dear to me. وحدة تقاتلت مع الحياة باش وصلت داكشي اللي بغات. So you are an inspiration for us. My question is, I think I asked 2 questions before, but the one that matters for me the most is sometimes كنبغيو نخدمو مع شي حد يكون عندنا البروجي ديالنا ولا الايديا ديالنا، ولكن كنبغيو نقلبو على شي حد اللي يخدم معانا. بحال ما تلقاوش شي حد يقدر يقرا الدماغ ديالنا اشنو كاين فيه ولا our ideas ولا and it's وبعض المرات كيكون صعيب. and how انت كيفاش you dealt with هذه؟ I'm sure you worked with many people with many teams، ولكن how you reached انك you had the right people معك اللي they share the same vision as yours. Thank you.
Very important question. شكرا سعيدة على هذه الأسئلة because it's trial and error. It's been trial and error. It's been sometimes very hard, very bitter. In the context of Le Wagon, I've had people, you know, like you invest in them and bring them a fantastic opportunity, and they even try. I've had like situations where money-wise, they were trying to take advantage of this business that was just building up, and they played with my trust. It was very tough because, of course, small, growing business, strong ethics behind, full commitment, and so I think it's really trial and error, and it's really about refining your communication. You can, at the end of the day, you can work with so many different people that you would not have imagined being able to work with. Of course, sometimes you have amazing surprises like Faye. Sometimes you have people that are, emerging in your mailbox that tell you, I want to hear your story, I want to work with you, and for 6 months they keep on coming back, and you're like, what, really? But to be able to attract those people, perhaps you have to go through other stuff. And we have expectations towards other people, but in work, like in personal relationships, it's a game of give and take, and it's a game of nurturing the trust. You can get very far with people that don't have necessarily like the exact skill sets that you're looking for, but because there's a common strong values, ethics, trust, kindness, and benevolence, then you're able to grow a team. And really don't fear the trial and error, because of course you want to avoid situations where you wasted your money, your time, you went nowhere, but it's never a loss. Like and it only refines what if you allow me to speak in this sort of language, my mentor keeps on telling me, you refine your bullshit filter over these last few years, essentially. And that is a skill that will, for being an adult is absolutely key. Being able to perceive in the smallest details verbal, non-verbal communication, whether you're going to be able to go where with this person. So keep your standards high, but don't fear the trial and error, and remain open, because that's how you are, and expose yourself as well. Like once you're very clear with your intentions around your business, you're very clear to other people, so the messages go through much better, and the right people get attracted to what you're doing.
If I can just share شوية من experience ديالي regarding this, حيت I feel it's an issue اللي ما كتقاداش، يعني غتوقع لينا إلا حليناها دابا we could face it in the future. When I wanted to work on my project at the beginning, I had people who showed interest in the project and everything, and they shared the same vision apparently. ملي بدينا الخدمة, like the actual work, they gave up. Like within 1 month they gave up, and I was صراحة تعصبت ما عجبنيش الحال. How come علاش الناس they let you down like this? But afterwards I was like, I love this project, I wanted to grow, بغيت نزيد به القدام, ولكن I should find people. هما الناس ما غاديش يلقاوني حيت أنا جالسة في بلاصتي, they can't find me هما. So what I did هو I joined واحد network تاع واحد organization, and then I found different people, they kind of shared the same thing. I presented my project and people showed interest in the project, and they are now part of the team, and it's great so far, alhamdulillah. And yeah, it just sometimes هاد القضية كتوقع when you feel disappointed and الناس ما تيكونوش معاك as supposed to.
Yeah, sure. I'll tell you another thing. Everything is organic. Cycles. You start a work relationship with someone else. You don't know how long it's gonna last. Perhaps it's gonna last for 6 months. Perhaps it's gonna last for 10 years. Perhaps your entire lifetime. You don't know. You have to take this risk with the same appetite for knowing the person, being able to build together, the same enthusiasm, even if you had other sort of experiences before. I do think there's wisdom in all of this. There's always, honestly, the right people show up for you, for the right lessons that you need to take, for the right fuel that you need to put in your project. That's the faith I got to at this point, which doesn't prevent me from also having negative emotions when I'm disappointed. But what I've refined very much is my capacity to communicate my expectations when things went not in the right direction, be able to see them coming and open the channel for communicating so that people are clear. We in Morocco have a culture that is rather non-confrontational, like a lot of cultures in Africa. People have a hard time saying no. People have a hard time just knowing what they want and who they are. And you as an entrepreneur, as a leader, you will be the one person that perceive it much better. And so either you have to create this space, this channel to pull people to come to you and be able to have this channel for being clear on where they're at in their project. You'll perceive it. Refining this sort of communication in a way that's also not necessarily confrontational is absolutely key success factor, I think.
Thank you so much, Hannah.
Thank you.
Right, Miss, if you want to go ahead.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum, ladies. Assalamu alaikum, Hannah. It's a really real pleasure seeing you again and hearing your inspiring stories plus the things that I know. Your energy is definitely, undoubtedly contagious, your smile. And the stories are very inspirational. And for me, there are always motives to keep moving forward and doing the best we can. I really appreciated the talk on, how to handle emotions. But my 2 questions that are very much related are about a value that I consider the fuel to keep moving, and that is resilience. So my first question is, how be able to build businesses that are resilient no matter what happens especially taking into consideration. And then the second related question is, what are your 5 values that has or have pushed you?
Okay. Questions. Thank you so much, Saitness. So I think destroyed by the experience. So I was trying to find a way to make her come back to a path of flourishing and blossoming. And I found this thing of Led by Her and dived into it and slowly pulled her into this. So resilience was at the core of the approach. And it was about betting on women that life had very much disenchanted, that had sometimes become really zombies, like just pale figures of themselves because they had received so much violence. This is something that unfortunately in Morocco we see a lot, like statistically speaking, the society is extremely violent to its women, and domestic violence is so very common. So I've seen this and I've seen the methodologies were all about reframing the narrative, inserting women in positive networks of people that are helpers over time, nourishing them with a lot of inputs and benevolence and patience, and let them heal the wounds. I think resilience is about this lucidity and capacity to heal and transform and all negative emotions into a fuel to advance. Now, all of this is very good, and I think each of us, if you look at your story, and if you look at your family story, it's not going to be very far where you'll find people and women in particular that embody the notion of resilience. C'est transgénérationnel. However, all of this can only help you if you're capable of framing it or reframing it in a way that feels empowering to you. And I'll go even further about resilience. Last year, I came across this notion of anti-fragility, and anti-fragility is something else. Resilience is about this capacity of bouncing back, right, on a certain track. You have you hit the wall, you bounce back, you continue, etc. You're always able to get back on track. What if you could, instead of getting back on track, get up onto another higher track of always growing, of always more vibration, of always more blossoming? And that could be told as a story of anti-fragility. I think very much the story of a lot of entrepreneurs in Africa. In Morocco, a lot of female entrepreneurs, a lot of who you are, really. Anti-fragile means you are cognizant of vulnerabilities, you are cognizant of limitations in your environment. You are aware whenever something bad happens in your business, in your project. You're capable, you have built the tools to understand, process it, always see it as a lesson and advance, but you're not doing the same thing again. You're actually going better. You're going stronger, you're going deeper, you're going more impactful, you're going softer, which is another thing that I want to tackle in this discussion today. We don't have to imitate other ways that can be abrupt, because that's the common standard in a society that has taken men and women into a sick notion of masculinity. Our very strength as women is different. It's perhaps detail-oriented, perhaps in capacity of meeting a network, of seeing subtle energies, of transforming it, of doing things in a very collective manner, of not having so much issues with the ego, all of this. I'm not saying this in a binary way. Each of us have elements of masculine energy and feminine energy, but also I would just so encourage you to dive into that sort of literature and understand better and to be able to appreciate the unique and delicate balance that you are, and the unique and delicate energy that you can bring in your approach, in your touch, in your signature, in all what you do. The way you do small things is the way you do everything. And you want to find yourself in every single detail that you do to say, oh, this is me. And I recognize myself. This is the most powerful fuel to your resilience and anti-fragility.
Thank you.
And yes, there's a very good reading. Faye, yeah, you can. We can share the book actually of Anti-Fragile, just like we can share the book on vulnerability by Brené Brown, which is a good reference as well.
Podcast too.
Yeah.
I agree. Brené Brown has a very amazing reading also called The Gifts of Imperfection. I read it last year and it was like very life-changing.
Absolutely. Thanks, Laitman.
Yeah. I want to give the floor to, should we say about 10 minutes left, Hanae?
Yes.
Maybe we can try to fit in 2 questions. What do you think?
Sure, absolutely.
We'll try. We can do it. I'm going to give the floor to Rizlan. Oh, Gil. Sorry.
Hi, Hanae. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for your enlightening ideas. I would just like to know, for instance, how we can actually become better leaders and become more confident at both communication and learning the skills that will help us to actually be more able to convince other people of what we are doing. It's not just like seeking their approval, but also to show them that you are working for a cause and you are trying to reach out to people who need help.
Yeah. It's very important question that you're asking. Thank you so much. I think it comes in line with what we've discussed a bit before. Being more cognizant of your strengths and your touch and your approach and your values will put you in a position where you can very much express your full self. It's important to define what you want to mean by leadership. Leadership is, for me, this capacity to, light up and spark the same inspiration or a comparable inspiration in other human beings. It's influence as well, in more practical, tactical terms. It's this capacity also to bring ideas into life. So for me, leadership is pragmatic, is anchored, is oriented towards collective goods. So whatever sort of leadership you want to bring out, you want to be very clear on how, who you are. That's the first question that leads you to go a bit deeper in your understanding of how you're showing up. Is how you're showing up consistent with who you are and your deepest aspirations. And then from there, of course, once you're clear on what's inside of you, you want to convey it in a way that's clear to the outside world. So again, emotional intelligence, communication, understanding the perceptions, being able to really see it very intuitively, to be able to play around with them, because sometimes you're going to be in settings that are welcoming to you. I feel very welcome in this group, for instance. And other times you're going to have to face a crowd that doesn't understand, like sees you as an alien, and it's very hard to catch their attention and their respect and the credibility and the trust. Now, another thing that I want to say is that leadership is step by step. It's perhaps the conversations that you're having. It's perhaps the smallest details. Leadership is when you go to the supermarket and you treat the people right around you, and perhaps you have a small word of kindness to them, and perhaps it leads them to feeling so open to you that they share a dream. And that for me is like the most rewarding experience of leadership, because it's simply an experience of human kindness. Or it's about being in a boardroom of C-level executives and trying to convince them that whatever you're pushing is absolutely worth it. So you want to have the rational clear. You want to have the cognitive knowledge, the right words. You want to speak the language of the people that are hearing you so they can hear you better. And a last one is be honest with yourself, because sometimes you can become so good at showing up as a leader, but you're only good if you're actually speaking the words of truth that are inside of you.
Okay. Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Hanae. So we are getting to the end of our session. We'll do one more question. Let's see. Maybe a Kut's question about, do you think it's a good idea to show the person behind the business and tell our story?
I think it's not just a good idea. I think it's absolutely necessary. Today, people are not buying products. They're buying experiences and stories. They want to see you. And even if you think that there's an outside world that's adverse because you don't fit in the standard criteria of a startup or entrepreneur, owning your story and telling it is actually what will make you successful, perhaps in the long run, or perhaps faster. But it's absolutely key, which is why I think your business plan, your strategic vision, all of this is key elements, key artifacts. But your journaling and your capacity to always be clear on where you're heading, who you are, and if you're not super clear, be in comfort with this discomfort is what will make you go very far, because you'll then win the brain and hearts of people around you. And it's about human beings at this point. So yes, you have to tell the story. You have to own your story and tell it and engage with it and be comfortable with it. And at the end of the day, you're going to create more stories than you think this way. Which I think is the most beautiful, the business of, because you're yourself, you're creating more businesses, because people around you feel inspired, is I think one of the most beautiful, consequences of you showing up to yourself.
All right, that's pretty clear. I had a worry in mind because I have been told once that my brand shouldn't be my face. Like I shouldn't associate my brand to myself too much.
Why not?
Yeah, and I asked myself that, and I said, why not just bring a human touch to the whole project, the new thing? After all, we are all humans who are creating projects and building things. Why not know the person behind?
Yes.
So
I think, sorry, I'd say why not, because I say there could be very good reasons for someone to tell you this. They want you to look professional, etc., etc. They know the perceptions. So you have to dig deeper into the reasons and the rationale, and you have to make a choice. If you want your business to represent who you are, it's only legitimate. It's not. It's absolutely key. Businesses in the world, in the history of humanity, have all been about people expressing who they were. So why would you shut yourself down? Why would you try to erase who you are? You're actually creating something. So it needs to. For me, it absolutely needs to reflect and express you. And also, it's important to always be in coherence with what you're expecting from your experience as an entrepreneur. Are you doing this because you need the money and that's a good business, or are you doing this because it's who you are and your values and your mission, in which case you are absolutely entitled to put yourself out there and give your story. For me, I see entrepreneurship, and for me, I think the main priority is to seek even more spaces of freedom in my personal relationships, in my professional relationships. Always be in a place of security and freedom to be who you are. So your brand is you. No, it's absolutely you. Now, you have to, once you do this, and it's a choice, you also have to build a healthy relationship to it, because sometimes this exposure can actually eat you a little bit. It wasn't my brand, Le Wagon, but eventually I started being called Madame Wagon when I was taking the train in Casablanca to Rabat, because it was so exposed. And it can become overwhelming. But once you have the right tools to, you know, understand that it's your baby, it's your project, you have, it's an expression of who you are, a form, a shape and form of what you're trying to bring to this world, then you're good to go. But I think really take the whole space you want. Sky is the limit, and also another thing that is important for your decision making in general, not just for this branding discussion. Decisions that are and intentions that are based on fear are limiting. If the rationale behind this recommendation that you are giving is that, oh, you won't look like as a professional, it's absolutely wrong. You can look exactly professional with something that looks like you, and your, you know, your choices, that is incarnated, and you can embody it in such a way. If the rationale and the intention is based on something else, then you have room for a conversation. But I do think that owning your story and telling it is what will make you successful.
Thank you very much, Hanae.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for everyone, and to Hanae for being so engaged during this session. I really enjoyed the conversation and learning from Hanae, and also from all of you and your journeys. And this is only the beginning. We're going to meet with women every other week. So next week, you all will have your group session with your facilitators. And the following week, I'll be announcing with you shortly who will be our guests for that session. But I'm going to collect all these questions that you added in the chat, the ones that you send in advance, and we'll keep bringing these up. You know, this is only our first female entrepreneur, although the center and heart of Douar Tech. There's so much more to explore. So thank you so much, Hanae, for joining us today. If you want to leave us with a thought.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's an immense pleasure to see this happening, to see so many inspiring stories. And I actually am very eager to hear more about who you are. So eventually what I'll tell Faye to do is that I'll give you, she'll share my email, and I hope in the coming weeks and throughout the program, we can have a one-on-one conversation with whomever is interested. Because yeah, I'd love to see what we can make happen together, and I mean, I also want you to realize how amazing what you are doing is for you, for your family, for your community, for Morocco. You are a key element to this systemic change that is happening, that is needed, and you are at the right time. In the right place. So keep the faith strong, keep up the good work, and congratulations. And I hope we speak soon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.